Good morning, everyone. Let's see. I'm gonna make sure everybody is there. Can everybody hear me okay? You want to drop something in the chat, you're happy to. Okay. So good morning. I'm Mike Bollinger, and I'm the Executive Director at Seed Savers Exchange. I'd like to welcome you all to the 2024 Seed Savers Exchange virtual conference. I have to say, I'm thrilled to be with you on day one of this exciting journey of community, collaboration, and cultivation. As I hope you all know about Seed Savers Exchange already, our organizational mission is to steward America's culturally diverse and endangered garden and food crop legacies. I believe our conference theme, Growing Together, embodies the essence of what Seed Savers Exchange stands for. Collaborative communities of gardeners, seed savers, and advocates who are passionate about biodiversity and nurturing the future of our planet. If you've attended past conferences, you'll notice that our structure is a little bit different this year. Last year, we had 2 days packed with multiple sessions. You kind of had to choose one and go back to recordings if you wanted to see others. We've decided this year to space things out, and so we have 4 months with sessions each day, each with their own theme. Today, we'll be talking about community, next month, foodways, and then plant breeding and climate. We're excited about this new format, but we definitely look forward to your feedback as we think about future virtual conferences. Today, we're fortunate to have speakers who will share their own personal experiences on topics ranging from garden diplomacy to school community gardens. We're thrilled to have Laura Lewis, Executive Director of the Organic Seed Alliance, as our keynote speaker today, along with others like Maggie Caritas, Anita Thompson, Kathy Jentz, Denise Kuzak, Megan Hess, and Devon Meyer, who will share their knowledge and experiences with us. Today, under the theme of community, we'll dig into the importance of building connections, sharing resources, and supporting one another in our gardening adventures. We'll learn about the significance of seed swaps and ancestry gardens, and explore the role of mutual aid in community seed network building. We're also excited to offer an art journaling workshop led by Devon Meyer, where you can unleash your creativity and reflect on the beauty of nature through art. You'll notice that we have the chat feature. I definitely encourage you to engage with speakers through the chat. We'll be monitoring that throughout the presentations, and we're leaving time at the end of each of the sessions to be able to do some question and answer with the presenters. And I also hope and encourage you to take time to explore and to connect with your fellow attendees. Everybody has the ability to be able to create profiles, and you can connect with each other to the extent that you're interested. It's a great opportunity to learn, share, and grow together. I also want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our speakers, sponsors, and all of you attendees for joining us today. And of course, a huge shout out to all the Seed Savers Exchange staff that have gone above and beyond yet again. Our session today is sponsored by UNFI. UNFI is a wholesaler connecting over 10,000 supplier partners to grocery stores and other value-added food retailers while working to drive positive change in the food system. UNFI's mission aligns with Seed Savers Exchange's mission, especially when it comes to improving food access. I'm going to share with you some of our community agreements. We'll highlight this at each of the sessions today, but just keep in mind today that as we are here virtually in community, to be respectful, curious, patient, speak from your personal experiences, and just let's be respectful in this space and take care of each other here. We're going to kick off the day with Dr. Laura Lewis, Executive Director of the Organic Seed Alliance. Before joining OSA, she developed and was director of the Washington State University Food Systems Program. She has her Ph.D. in biogeography with expertise in centers of origin for agrobiodiversity. Her current work is focused on supporting the mission of OSA with particular focus on strengthening organic seed systems across the entire supply chain through utilization and diversification of cropping systems and markets. Prior to coming to WSU, she was assistant professor of biogeography at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and her research focused on crop evolution in Africa and food access in the city of Baltimore. She's most interested in how organic agrobiodiversity is utilized on farm and within communities to support resilient agroecosystems. Let's give a big virtual welcome to Dr. Lewis.
Thank you so much, Mike, and hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here today for the kickoff of these virtual events. And I'm just honored to be able to speak with you all today about my experience around community participatory action and my story, my seed story. Like Mike said, I am the executive director of the Organic Seed Alliance. I've been there for about 3 months, but I have been a partner working with the Organic Seed Alliance since 2011. So it's been just really an honor to be able to work with them and throughout the years, but now to be able to be part of the staff is just a dream come true. It really has brought together the executive leadership that I've been honing in on over the last several years, as well as my love for germplasm and all things seed. So it's exciting today to be able to share with you about my work, what it means to be a part of a community, and the participatory work that we do as well. So just a rundown of what I'm going to focus on today. I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and how I got to the point where I am in terms of the work I do around seed networks and germplasm. I want to talk about community because today that is the theme. And there's some frameworks that I've used over the last 20 years that have really helped me frame the work that I do to support agrobiodiversity, whether it's utilization of that diversity, conservation of it, how to help create better markets and value-added opportunities for folks as well. I want to talk a little bit about participatory action as well and what it means to do participatory work within community. And then also talk about Organic Seed Alliance and the work that we do in our programs. And then just some basic takeaways that hopefully will inspire all of you in terms of the work that you're doing across your own seed communities. And then hopefully we'll have time for questions and answers as well. So a little bit about my story. I'm from the Pacific Northwest. I grew up out here. Both of my parents' families have lived here for 6 generations, and almost all of them work in the maritime trades. So when I was young, I had the opportunity to garden with my grandparents and my parents. So I was always really intrigued by plants. And from a very early age, I became really interested, particularly in plants that had that were very smelly. So I was very interested in the perfume trade and how plants were connected to scent. And that journey just kept, I just stayed on that journey. And in high school, I was lucky enough to get a job on a organic herb farm in Bellingham, Washington called Cascade Cuts. And that was really my first introduction to commercial agriculture. So up until then, I had been doing a lot of gardening with my family and spending a lot of time, outdoors, mostly on the water. But this was really my first opportunity to be able to work with a community of folks that were really passionate about plants. And so I decided to stay on that farm after high school. I didn't jump right into college. I was so excited about farming. And then I decided at one point that, I wanted to learn more about the science of agriculture. And I really wanted to become a grower for the perfume industry. So that was really the catalyst for going to college. And my advisor had no idea what to do with me. They were just like, we've never had anyone come into our advising office and say they wanted to work in the perfume industry. So I started taking classes in crop and soil science at Washington State University. And while I was there, I was fortunate to get a job with the USDA Agricultural Research Service at the Western Regional Plant Introduction Station. So this is one of the many repositories throughout the United States that curates our germplasm, our national collections. And I was hired to characterize the entire pea collection, our national pea collection. So it took me 3 years. I spent the winters characterizing the seed, and then during the growing season, I was characterizing peas in the field. I was also able to work on other cold season legume crops and the phaseolus collection that is also housed at the ARS repository in Pullman, Washington. So at that point, I completely shifted my focus and became really, really interested in centers of origin. How did all of this incredible plant diversity come into being? Who were the folks that stewarded the seed over millennia? And yeah, just how did all of this come to be? So I continued to work for the USDA throughout my time doing my undergraduate work. And then I left Washington State University and moved to West Africa and became a Peace Corps volunteer. And I was doing work with the African Food Systems Initiative, where I was able to work with farmers, mostly subsistence farmers who were growing millet, sorghum, cowpea, peanut, and other bean varieties. And it was just a really fascinating experience for me to be in Niger for those 2 years, working directly with farmers. And it is also what really led me to appreciate participatory work. And I wanted to just share with you my first big failure doing participatory work before we launch into hopefully some of the success stories as well. So while I was in this remote village in Niger, one of the big challenges that they had was they had 2 foot pump wells that were no longer working. And so I took it upon myself to do some work. I met with the leaders in the village and asked, what would be a great way to be able to help the community get these pumps working again. And they suggested taking up a collection and going around to each household and collecting the equivalent of about a US quarter, but cumulatively it would be enough to be able to fix the foot pump if everyone in the community contributed. And so I went around to about 150 households, and 148 of them contributed the funding to be able to get these foot wells fixed. But 2 households did not want to contribute. And so I went back to the leadership in my village and said, hey, I'm happy to contribute the equivalent of the 50 cents that we didn't get from the 2 households in the village. And the leadership in the village said, absolutely not. We're not going to fix the foot wells or the foot pumps for the wells unless we have 100% participation. We'd rather have you return all of the funding to all of the other households than fix it and have these 2 households have access to a well without having contributed. And so it was really the first moment where I was like, wow, I really went about this in the wrong way. I didn't spend the time getting to know the folks in the village, understanding the community dynamics, understanding where they had assets already in the village that could have been leveraged. Just really what were the intricacies of the community. I just sort of launched in and thought, I'm going to get these fixed. And I spent 2 years in that village, and those wells never were fixed because there wasn't a consensus of how that would work. And it was really a huge wake-up call for me in terms of the work that I have done now for the last 30 years in terms of looking at community and participatory work. Once I finished up Peace Corps, I came back to the United States and worked for another germplasm repository. This one was in Davis, California, the National Clonal Germplasm Repository, where they house all of the Mediterranean fruit and nut tree germplasm. So I do have quite a passion for germplasm, both seed as well as clonal germplasm. And I was managing the Morrison Diosporus collection. So I was managing mulberries and persimmons, and also involved in the characterization of all the other collections that they had there. And while I was in Davis, I pursued my Ph.D. And like Mike was saying, my focus was on centers of origin and domestication of agricultural species, with a particular focus on pearl millet. So millet was the primary subsistence crop where I was living in West Africa. And I was really interested in how farmers were managing their seed because they were allowing wild and intermediate forms of millet to spontaneously germinate in their fields. So these kind of weedy forms of millet, but they were making sure that those those plants that were spontaneously germinating were able to mature. And it was really a way to manage food insecurity, knowing that if they had low rainfall or other types uh, of of stresses in the environment that would impact their harvest, that those weedy varieties or those more wild idiotypes would still produce grain. And so I focused really on how farmers were managing hybridization between these wild forms and these farmer varieties, and the fact that they were constantly integrating these wild genes back into their landrace varieties. Sort of the exact opposite that we see across most of our seed systems, most of our conventional seed systems around the world, where we're trying to create something that's very uniform and does not have a lot of those traits that are indicative of wild varieties. And you can see in this slide on the right-hand side, that's some of the millet varieties that I was working with while I was in Davis. And so once I was able to finish up my graduate work, I spent about 20 years as an academic. So it's really exciting to transition from that world into the nonprofit sector and be able to support OSA's mission around organic seed. So I just wanted to show you, these are some of the storage facilities for millet and sorghum in Niger, West Africa. And so these are made with the stalks of millet as well. So they used millet not just as a food, but as a primary building resource as well. So many of the homes that folks lived in were made out of old millet stalks and sorghum stalks. Their fencing, a lot of the fodder that they used for their animals. So millet was so important, and all of the different traits associated with the plant were also very important. So really understanding the whole organism and what, the value that was being added to these communities, whether it was because they were able to grow really tall millet to build all their fencing, or they were looking at specific types of millet because of different cultural preferences. So it was very exciting for me to be able to not only live and work with farmers in West Africa, but then to be able to devote myself in the early part of my academic career to supporting African food systems. So I wanted to shift gears now and talk a little bit about community and what it means to work across community. And like I mentioned before, my big failure when I was looking at trying to help fix this pump, I wasn't looking at what the assets in the community were. I was looking at what was missing, what wasn't working right. And I really want to focus a little bit of my talk today on looking at a community from a holistic perspective and what that means. One of the frameworks that I've used over the last 15 years or so is called the Community Capitals Framework. And it really offers this way to look at a community from a very holistic perspective, how interconnected different forms of capitals within a community are. And I'm gonna get into that. There's 7 different community capitals that this framework looks at. And I'm gonna talk about them sort of one at a time, but they're very much integrated with one another. They overlap. A lot of the images that folks use to talk about community capitals show these sort of Venn diagrams of all of these capitals overlapping. But it's a really great way for me, and I hope that it helps inspire some of you, to think about where you have assets within a community and how to leverage those assets to help out other aspects of the community that may be under-resourced. So there's 7 different community capitals, and I'm going to just go through each of them a little bit just to talk about what they are and how we can think about these. So the natural capital that you have within a community. And so I know we have participants from probably all over the United States, and I'm assuming even some other countries. And so thinking about where you live geographically, what are those natural assets that you have in your community? It could be your water, it could be soil, it could be your air quality, it could be all of these different things that make up the natural environment in which you live, and how those capitals are either leveraged or resourced. We have cultural capital as well. And so these are those values and norms, beliefs and traditions that people inherit from family, school, and community. And it's so important. And I know that part of what is going on with the virtual conference is even having opportunity to share art, to share different aspects of your cultural community as the Seed Savers Exchange within this forum. And so understanding what are the cultural assets that you have within your community is also very important. Then we have human assets. So these are the attributes of those individuals that live within a community, that strengthen that community, that contribute to the good of a community, and look at self-improvement, not only within themselves as individuals, but how they can also contribute to the overall community. The next 4, so there's 7 total. There's social capital, and these are the connections that we have. So how connected are we across the community? How connected are different organizations working within the community? Often we have a lot of work taking place around food security. So when I was working with WSU to help support the food system in Washington, and we really saw a major collapse across supply chains during COVID-19. And so really understanding how connected those organizations were across the social landscape was really important to understand where we could leverage assets and where we had deficiencies. And so understanding how cohesive a community is, looking at those social connections. We have political capital in all of our communities, and this is the ability to influence and enforce rules, regulations, and standards, how we participate in civic discourse around difficult public issues. And again, this was very relevant in Washington State during COVID. We had a tremendous amount of political capital. We had the governor's office as well as our Secretary of Agriculture willing to leverage assets that weren't necessarily designated for food security and reallocate those assets to make sure that we were able to address communities across the state that were really feeling the brunt of COVID and access to food. And then there's financial capital. We all know what financial capital means. So knowing whether or not you have availability of financial assets within your community to get the work done. And then the built environment is the last part of the community capitals framework. And this represents that infrastructure of the community, the basic set of facilities. It could be broadband, access to broadband. It could be access to public transportation. All of these parts of the built environment, your built geography, and how that affects your community or how it creates a community that's under-resourced. So some of the work that I was doing in Baltimore around food security was looking at the built environment and how different neighborhoods were cut off from being able to go to grocery stores or access food because of the way that the built environment had created these sort of zones of food insecurity because of lack of access. So the built environment is very important. And we saw this also, again, referencing COVID, when folks were working from home and those who had high-speed internet or access to broadband versus those who didn't, and how that really impacted not only education, but access to work and the ability to continue to work. So all of these capitals together are really important for me when I think about the work that I do across the food system and where we have adequate assets and how to leverage those assets from different parts of the community to be able to support other parts of the community. And so now I'm going to get into seed networks and community and provide some more specificity around looking at different aspects of community and seed networks. And I have some examples here. I know some of these slides might be hard for you to see, but I wanted to share just some interesting seed networks from other parts of the world. So this is a seed network in Nepal, and you can see here they've mapped, excuse me, rice, maize, and millet seed networks. And when you see 2 and 3 on this particular image, this is a seed flow that was either free or was given as a gift. And so the way that we think of how a seed network works and the trust within a community, and I saw this working in African food systems as well, where if you lost your seed or you didn't have access to seed, something happened and you weren't able to save seed from the significant varieties that you were using within your household or within your community, who you trusted to be able to go to get new seed. And it was often a very specific way that folks would go about, they would ask a family member first, then they might ask a neighbor, they would ask someone within their community to help them replace seed. They would go outside of the community if they had to. And the very last person they trusted or organization they trusted would be the government or extension. And so it's really eye-opening to see how different places around the world think of their seed community, the trust within that seed community, and where they want to go to be able to acquire new seed. And also looking at this, the blue colored nodes indicate women and the black colored nodes indicate men. So you see a fairly equal distribution between gender within Nepal and the seed system. But in other parts of the world, we do see how gender is so important within the seed system. This is just a photo of women threshing millet in West Africa. And as they would do the threshing, they would also pull aside millet that looked really good to be able to save for next year's crop. So even though men were primarily involved in the subsistence farming that was taking place, they were doing the agronomic work. It was women that were actually selecting the seed for the following year. And we can see this through this seed network in Kenya with beans, sorghum, and millet, and the seed exchange taking place. And it's the red represents women, and the pentagons actually represent women over the age of 45. So you can see how important not only gender can be within a seed network and a seed community, but also age and knowledge of these seed systems. And so it's just, thinking about your own seed community and seed communities around the world. And these are seed communities where folks are still growing and saving a lot of the seed themselves. And so how that seed gets distributed, where folks see trust and knowledge within their communities as well, and how they're willing to engage across their community to leverage those assets. So diving into participatory work, and participatory is just involving or characterized by participation. So community is a group of individuals that have come together because of shared beliefs or a shared desire to be able to work on something. And participatory work or a participatory action is a way to go about doing that community work. And so I'm going to talk a little bit now about participatory action, in particular, appreciative inquiry and asset-based community development. And so when we think of participatory action, we're thinking of the opportunity to collaborate, to cooperate, and to create a collective vision or body of work together to support a community need. And this can be grounded within this participatory action framework. And so there's a lot of resources out there on participatory analysis for community action. And again, this is what I didn't know when I was going in and trying to address the problems with the well in the village where I was living. And so really being able to step back and look at what, instead of looking at what is missing from a community, looking at what assets are actually in that community across those capital frameworks and being able to leverage those assets to help areas within the community that are under-resourced. And one of the first ways to go about doing this that I love to use is appreciative inquiry. And I'm sorry, this is wordy, but it was hard to find a graphic that would help demonstrate appreciative inquiry. And it's really the approach to community development that seeks to engage folks across an issue and looking at what assets are currently there. What do we appreciate about our seed community? What do you appreciate about Seed Savers Exchange? What do you appreciate about the local community that you're in and the work that you're doing? And so, you oftentimes when we do appreciative inquiry, you start with just yourself and you'll start writing down the things that you appreciate about a specific aspect. It could be a program. We did this a lot within WSU, looking at different aspects of our food systems work. So what do we appreciate about a certain program that we have? And to spend some time on your own, just listing out the things that you appreciate. And then coming together with one other person who's also done the same thing and comparing notes and understanding, like, where does this person see assets? Where do they appreciate the work that's happening within community? Where do you have connection across the different aspects that you appreciate together? And you continue to build that group up until you come together as, a larger community to talk about all of the ways that you appreciate what's happening in your community. You can use different ways of mapping this out, concept mapping. There's a great tool called ripple effects mapping, where you can see the ripple effect of these programs and the way that they've been resourced and how that has rippled out across your community. But you can also identify areas that have been under-resourced through this way of doing an appreciative inquiry. You can see where those ripples have not been able to help strengthen different aspects of a community. And so I think it's a really great way to go about thinking of what you currently have and how you can utilize that and be able to support other aspects of the community. Oftentimes when we do community work, we think of where there are threats, where there
Hello, everyone. Looks like maybe we lost Laura. I'm not sure what happened, but she'll have the ability to be able to kind of log back in here. So we'll just give her a minute and see. Yeah, the presentation just froze up for me too. Can anybody hear me? If you drop something in the chat just to see if we're having an issue on our end. Okay. Yeah, that was wow. That was really good and getting really good. I hope that Laura's able to get back in and that we can continue on with her presentation. I'd love, as I was kind of listening to Laura and thinking about questions that were coming up along the way, I'd love if you would drop any questions that you have into the chat, and that way, as we kind of get towards the end of this and hope that she can kind of come back on, that we'll have some questions for her too. I am going to just mute here for a second. I have Laura's cell phone number, so I'm just going to call and see if I can connect with her quick. So just give me a brief moment, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I have been trying to get in touch with Laura, and we're not able to connect with her. So I'm not sure what happened with the internet connectivity on her end, or why things froze up. But I am going to continue to try to reach out to her. So if you want to continue to hang out just for a few minutes here, I sincerely apologize for the issue. And so we will all continue to try to get in touch with her. And if for whatever reason we're not able to get back to to this specific time, I do intend to try to work something out with Laura to make sure that we can get through the rest of her presentation, because yeah, I just think that the approach that she's taking, the information that she's sharing, is incredibly worth the time to be able to kind of have out there. So yeah, thanks, and hold on, and we will continue to try to troubleshoot this. Be back. Hello, everyone. I'm back. The update is that we have not been able to get in touch with Dr. Lewis. Tried to call her a few times, and we've tried her office. And so unfortunately, there must be something happening on her end where she lost connectivity. So I think at this point, what we'll do, I see there's a little bit of chatting going on. Looks like some snow in places, garlic up. I think what I'll do is just leave this kind of live broadcast for this session open, and if people want to chat, then that's great. We're going to connect with Laura and make sure that we can get the rest of her presentation recorded at another time, and then we will notify everybody and make sure that we get that up and available so that we can hear the rest of her presentation. So I apologize for the technical difficulties at this point, but appreciate your understanding in this, and yeah, look forward to seeing the rest of the chats as you have it. The next session does start at 11:15. And that's with Maggie Caritas, and the topic of her presentation is From Seeds to Community. And so look forward to that. Michael Washburn, the Preservation Director at Seed Savers Exchange, will be the host for that conversation. So I won't be back, but until another session later. But appreciate you all being here and our time together. So thank you. Laura, you're back.
Oh no. Oh.
Oh. All right. Well, looks like she is trying to connect, but still not quite there. So we'll keep trying. Oh. Like on the platform that we use, I can see when she's on and trying to get up on stage, and she just popped off again. So yeah, we'll see where we're at. And I think if we have, I think we had scheduled for an hour for her presentation, and the next one starts at 11:30. So if we can get her back even just for a few minutes, maybe we'll see if we have time to kind of plug in just a little bit. Oh. Oh. Okay. Well, we're going to keep working on this. Give us a few more minutes. Hey, Laura.
Hey, I don't even know where it dropped off because I had my phone off.
That's okay. I think we're live. And so, yeah, you were just, it was right when you were probably, a minute or two into talking about appreciative inquiry.
Okay, well, I know we only have a few minutes, so I will, I know everyone has access to my slides, but I'll breeze through OSA's programs. And sorry, everyone, I had my phone off, so I didn't even know because I didn't want to be interrupted during my talk. So bear with me.
Sounds great.
Okay. So I'm back, and I would love to be able to talk about OSA in particular, and I will go a bit quickly through the rest of my presentation just because I want everyone to be able to have a nice break. So Organic Seed Alliance has 3 specific program areas. We have education, research, and advocacy. And all of this work is done from a participatory framework. So we really hold that dear as an organization. And even in the convening work that we do, we make it very participatory as well. And so across our 3 different programs, we have a lot of educational materials available for folks who are interested um, in seed saving, whether it's from a very small backyard perspective all the way up to large organic commercial production systems. And so we have different toolkits. We also have a class that you can take, an online course, and we're developing an advanced course as well to be able to take classes. And then I think one of the things that we're most excited about is the Organic Seed Commons, which all of you as individuals can join. And it's a community of seed people where you can do peer-to-peer learning, you can mentor one another. There's so much opportunity within the Seed Commons. You can use our course materials and modify them for your own organizations. And so it's hosted through Mighty Networks, which a lot of different organizations use for their educational content. And so this is a very exciting place to be able to participate in education with one another. A little bit about our participatory research. So we do a lot of work with our organic seed growers on their farms. And so we do have some research farms ourselves, but we primarily do smaller research projects with public plant breeders where we may be just doing some screening for them of germplasm that hasn't been grown under organic systems. But then we do most of our research on farmers' fields in participation with them. And so all the way down to research design, trial design, the way the data is going to be collected, what data is being collected, how it's going to be used. So it becomes this very incredible community of researchers rather than a researcher sort of telling everyone what is going to happen. So it's a great way to be able to work across the organic seed supply chain with these incredible farmers who are really invested in improving organic germplasm. And so this is just a farmer's field that we work with in California, one of the field days that we hosted where folks are able to convene together and learn about organic seed. And so we really focus on building this kind of robust supply of organic seed by fostering seed systems that are regional, responsive, and resilient. So we have several different areas across the country where we do research. Our staff are located across the country. And so really being able to work specifically with groups. And like I said, we have a very decentralized focus of our work, participating in regional community efforts. Two of the big things that have come out of OSA over the last 10 years or so were the purple sprouting broccoli and the abundant Bloomsdale spinach. So our tagline is heirlooms for tomorrow. And so, we're really hoping to support this participatory plant breeding work through the development of these new varieties as well for our organic producers. And then we do a lot of participatory sensory analysis. I know you're going to be hearing from Lane Selman at one of the upcoming virtual conferences. And so we work really closely with organizations like the Culinary Breeding Network. This was a sensory analysis of dry farmed tomatoes to understand like flavor, taste, texture, processing of these farmed tomatoes and how they held up for the end users, knowing that they did so well under field conditions, dry field conditions on multiple farmers' fields. Okay, and the last aspect of our work is our seed advocacy work. And this is really working within the National Organic Coalition that we're part of to push the National Organic Program and the National Organic Standards Board to close loopholes around organic seed. And so participatory advocacy, we're putting together a participatory advocacy toolkit to empower all of you to be able to go out and do your own advocacy work as well. So we're all working together. And why do we need seed advocacy? Because of the consolidation of the seed industry over the past 150 years or so. So we see fewer and fewer companies owning the vast majority of germplasm that organic farmers have access to. And so how do we support organic seed systems and make sure that farmers have access to the seed that they need to really be able to supply? Right now, we're not even able to come close to supplying the amount of seed that we need to address the organic demand across the United States. And this is from a recent trip to DC, where we were doing seed advocacy work with the National Organic Coalition. We met with 50 state senators and reps to talk specifically about organic systems. And like I mentioned, consolidation of the seed industry. So what are the takeaways of all of this work? And we've talked about community today, participatory work, appreciative inquiry, and how do we wrap all of that together in terms of the work that we do? And really, it's important to define your community, which you all did with me through the poll that I sent around, collaborating like you're doing with one another, cooperating and celebrating, which is what this Seed Savers Exchange virtual conference is about, coming together and celebrating your community, and then repeating as often as necessary or as often as you can. And this is the results of the poll. And I love that so many of you were positive and providing appreciative words about your seed community. The majority of you shared just what the positive aspects of your seed community were. And the larger the word you can see, the more often it was shared. So learning, education, organic, small, excited, local. So it was, for me, just really heartwarming to see how much appreciation you all have for your seed communities. And then in terms of what programs were most would best serve your seed community, the Seed Savers Exchange folks primarily said participatory education outside of all of the above. And the difference that we had between the poll that I gave to folks that are part of our Instagram community, where they were looking for participatory advocacy. So slightly different, but it was great to see your results as well. And just celebrating this work, I wanted to just mention our conference that's coming up, the Organic Seed Growers Conference in 2025. And we have our call for proposals open. We're looking for creative works, short sessions, long sessions. We have a multi-day conference, and you can participate in person or virtually. So we love to celebrate this participatory work, and we'd love to celebrate with you. And then just this, I always want to mention, like, we're not all going to be able to do the same level of work. We're setting the table for everyone to be able to come and participate, but not everyone's going to have the same tools. And so just being able to meet folks where they are and see where we have assets within our community, and being able to work together without the expectation that we're all doing the same amount of work. And so I just love what Ashley says here, but that's not how we need it to be. We're not looking at having an equal playing field in terms of who can participate. We want everyone to participate, but what everyone's bringing to the table. We need to meet everyone where they are and what they're able to provide and contribute. And I always love ending with this quote from Darwin. It has so much optimism when we think of germplasm, especially over the last 150 years, with so much consolidation and so much genetic erosion and so many varieties lost. We have the potential to continue to see diversification happen. Crop evolution does not stop. And so I'm just excited about all the work that you're doing as you grow out heirloom varieties, as you're looking for new traits and characteristics that might be coming out in your gardens and in your fields and on your farms, to just always have that knowledge and understanding that a variable organism is not going to cease to vary. And so the opportunity to still see so much potential, as we like to say, the heirlooms of tomorrow. And now I have time for questions and answers. And I know we're pretty much out of time, but I'll be around all day. So if folks also want to send me something through the chat or within the conference forum, I'm happy to engage as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laura, for being here. We're so sorry to have lost you. So I'm going to try to connect with you maybe after this and see if there's a way that we could try to record, the rest of your session.
Yeah.
It was so great. And yeah, I was jotting down notes as you were going along to kind of follow up with questions. We do need to jump here to another session just in a couple of minutes, but we did have Heidi K ask a question in regard, I'm going to pop it up here, wondering if you've had encountered any difficulties with huge GMO seed companies interfering.
Yes, many of them. Yeah, we actually were involved a few years ago in a lawsuit because of some GMO issues. And yeah, we've worked. That's part of our advocacy work, is definitely helping support. And we have quite a few stories of that on our webpage as well.
Great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sorry for the technical difficulties.
No, that's okay. It's okay. I have one just follow-up question quick too, in thinking about you're talking about the intricacies of the communities that you're in, and the small seed growers that you're working with. And through one of the publications that Seed Savers Exchange does with the seed trade census, we kind of had that recent publication came out. We've just seen such a growth in the number of small seed companies that are really focused on, regionally adapting varieties to specific, micro, regions or micro regions or microclimates. Can you talk about how, with such a boom in, in those farmers growing those seeds, what role does OSA play in working with those producers?
Yeah, and we on our website, we have a directory of organic seed growers from across the country. And I think, one of the things, especially being a geographer, I'm really interested in is where we have similar so looking at regional adaptation, which is so important, but then also how can we help seed growers that are maybe in a niche market or a niche geographic area still be able to market seed outside of that area. So we're working specifically with one of our seed grower partners. They're called Saltwater Seeds, and they're located on the Olympic Peninsula. And the focus of their work is on maritime adaptation. And so looking at similar latitudes on the East Coast as markets as well. So, there's the opportunity to create these incredible new varieties, or be able to steward seed that's regionally adapted. But oftentimes the marketplace isn't large enough to support those niche seed growers as well. And so really thinking about not only the regional adaptation, but then where they might have similar markets where that seed would also be beneficial. So that we've been talking about New England and part of the Mid-Atlantic, for instance, with saltwater seeds as an opportunity for them to be able to expand some of their marketing work.
Yeah, great. Well, again, thank you so much for being here and for your time and for your willingness to be, the opening day keynote presenter. I feel fortunate to have had you here with our community.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate not only being invited, but being able to interact with the audience throughout the day. So, and
Yeah,
thank you
great.
everyone for the poll. I'm sorry, my slides, I guess I had to reshare and I didn't. So
It's okay.
technical
We'll get it worked out.
difficulties. I know. Next time I need like a headphone so we can like be talking to each other the whole time. I can know what's going on. Okay. Thanks
All right.
everyone.
Thanks a lot. Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.